Our last question was by Councillor Jones. Did we get that enough response back for you?
Can I just come back a little bit more, because I just want to feel that we have got a clear evidence trail that shows that when we were looking at to ensure that no material extracted was ever moved by road, it's clear that if they come back at a later date, that within the documentation of the application and of the minutes of this meeting, it is quite clear that we were assured as members of the planning committee that at no time any of the sand or gravel will be removed by road. So I think that's really what I'm trying to drive into, because I've taken on board everything that's been said, and of what I've read in the documentation. I just want to be clear at this end of the application process and our inspecting of it all and the rigour in our questioning, that is as much assurance as we can give, so that if in 5 years' time they do want to come back because of whatever circumstances there are, that future members of a planning committee are able to see that we were rigorous in our challenge on this matter. Thanks, Chair.
Do you wish me to come in on that? Okay, so I've explained the planning controls which are in place, which would be a planning condition and a planning obligation, and confirmed that the planning service are happy that there is sufficient control to prevent any movement of material by HGV. So I don't think I need to recap on that. I've also confirmed that in my opinion, and I'm sure Adrian could confirm this, the accesses would not be suitable for that purpose, and indeed I would imagine it's fairly unlikely they could be improved to be suitable given their constraints. I think maybe the matter being raised is kind of minuting the committee would not be favourable to any future application to change that restriction. So I guess that's a matter of minuting that point in the committee resolution. And it would seem to me, but in terms of the way the planning recommendation is framed, I'm happy that there is sufficient control to ensure that would not occur. Thank you.
Chair, can I just come in there, Chair, if that's okay? Alex Spur here.
Yes, that's fine.
I understand the point that is being made, but it's important to note that we're deciding this application, and we can't prevent today. We cannot prevent what the applicant might put forward in 5 years' time. So, if they were to put forward an application in 5 years' time to vary that condition, that would be up to them, and we cannot fetter the decision-making process of the LPA in the future. However, what we've got in place today for this application is a robust condition that would be enforceable, and as Michael says, it's included in the Section 106 agreement as well. So in terms of what this committee is deciding upon, I think you've got as robust a position as we are going to get, but we can't say what will happen in 3 years' time, so I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think that's what Councillor Jones were remarking on, that the conditions we have now are robust enough, and if they have to come back for any more, then we will stand up to what we've done.
That's right. Thanks, Chair, for that, because clearly our names are on this application, and when the vote's taken, there it will be in place, and that's me wanting to be assured, and I'm happy with what I've heard. So thanks a lot, Chair. Thanks a lot, officers.
Could I come in at that point, Chair?
Sorry, Chair, it's Adrian here. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Williams next, and then I'll fetch you back in, Adrian. There's still questions to officers anyway. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, just following on from the conversation that we've had, is there any possibility that we could put in as part of the conditions that any future applications between now and the finishing of the project any changes to transportation actions should be brought back to the planning committee for their deliberation and decision to back up the position we have within the basic.
Yeah, I think that will be in the minutes, councillor, to say that the conditions we have got now, if they want to veer off from those conditions, they will have to come back to a planning committee.
Yeah, rather than it being a delegated decision.
Yeah, it could be a new thing that has to come back to committee anyway.
Yeah, which is probably going to be a completely different committee, but
yeah,
nevertheless, yeah. My other point is we've been told that there will be continuous pumping of water out of the site into the river, and I'd like to ask the officers if the possible effect of this water going into the river could have any effect further downriver on flooding in other areas. We all know the position we've been in the last few days with flooding down Castleford and other areas, and I'm just wondering if the possibility allowing for bad weather conditions and extra water being pumped into the river has been plotted.
So just to confirm that is something that's been looked at in detail through the hydrological and hydrogeological reports submitted by the applicant, and has then been questioned by the Environment Agency in terms of the impact the development would have on flood risk. I guess to answer the question in a straightforward way, there would be discharge into the river. That would be limited by the permit from the Environment Agency. So they would only grant a permit if they believed that would have no adverse effect, including in terms of ecology and flood risk. A certain volume of water per day is referenced in the report. However, that would be confirmed through this permitting process. I guess from a common sense point of view, discharging water into the river in normal conditions at a restricted rate, if the river wasn't in flood, is not going to be an issue, providing that there's appropriate treatment of that water prior to discharge. During flood conditions, as Mr. Ballum described earlier, they would have to allow the workings to flood, and that there wouldn't be dewatering on those occasions. Effectively, the workings would become part of the floodplain, and in fact, could have a beneficial effect in that way. So the detail would be controlled through the environmental permitting process, but that's my understanding of how it would work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Chair. Really, it's to add to what Councillor Jones has said about material leaving the site. It's all got to be taken away by barges. Well, we've spoken about 8-ton barges going towards Dewsbury, but apparently there's no landing facilities there for it. So really, we've not spoken about where it's going the other way, where it could go in 40-ton barges. Is the landing facilities there? And really, is this planning application dependent on further planning applications in other authorities?
So I'll just to answer that one for you, Chair. The application suggests, so there are wharfage facilities that are consented in Leeds as mineral wharfs. There are some plans to bring material from the Humber that way into Leeds, which haven't come to fruition yet, I don't believe. But there are existing wharfs in Leeds that have consented to be used as mineral wharfs. And then there will be other offloading facilities that already exist on the canal and navigation network too, which is obviously all linked together. Up to and is much more widely used to the east, up to the Humber estuary and Goole. So it's correct to say that there would be a need for a wharf to be reinstated at the applicant's works in Ravensthorpe near Dewsbury. Mr. Ballum explained earlier that there was an existing wharf there previously because it was an old coal site, and there's no impediment to reinstating a wharf. And in fact, a wharf is a relatively straightforward thing. It's effectively just a platform on the side of the canal. So although there would be consent requirement for off-site consent, if in the event that material was to go to the preferred destination, which is the new lay plant in Ravensthorpe, that would effectively be controlled by the planning consent, because there'd be a negatively framed planning permission which should prevent the applicant from doing anything other than that. And essentially it would be applicant's problem to get that consent in place, and they couldn't operate the site unless it was in place, unless there was another available wharfage elsewhere on the network. So effectively, I wouldn't say the application is reliant on necessarily on specific new wharfage coming into play, but for the applicant to actually develop the site and use the network, there would clearly need to be some infrastructure development off-site, but that is not uncommon with planning applications. And providing there's suitably robust negatively framed planning conditions, then we can be assured that the applicant will have to deliver that off-site infrastructure before the working could commence. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Swift.
I think it's on this same theme about the reliability of the canal barge thing. I mean, Alex confirmed that any future application would have to be dealt with on its own merits and couldn't be kind of prejudged by our views at the moment. Now, in relation to the 106, I wonder if we could have clarification. I don't know if this is Michael or Alex, but that if there was a fresh planning consent granted, either by us or on appeal, would the 106 agreement that's associated with this planning application still be in force in relation to a subsequent planning application? Because I'm thinking of Newmarket Lane, where, you know, the agreements that we had on the first permission for the football ground didn't stand up when they came back with another application. I think that's question number one. I suppose question number two is more squarely for Michael and Adrian, but it does seem to me that in the same way that Councillor Jones was saying, they come back in 5 years, they've had a change of end user or a change of where the customers are, or the financial requirements of the Canal and River Trust have become excessively burdensome. So that by that time, they've already put all the infrastructure into the site, they're in production. They're still coming back on the argument that they're the only place in West Yorkshire. And it would seem to me that they'll come back with an improved access onto Aberford Road, possibly with a traffic light junction opposite Lime Pit Lane, and they'll be looking either for a permission from us or a permission on appeal, as I say. And by that time, they'll have, as it were, dug in more ways than one, and they'll say this is an established site, and there's a range of customers across West Yorkshire that are completely dependent on it. And you know, I would have thought that there's a risk factor against that, a significant risk factor, plus, as I say, a very specific question about would the current 106 still be there if there was a fresh planning consent granted, or would it fade away? And finally, following what Councillor Harvey said, is there a bond in place to cover the eventual restoration? Thanks, Chair.
Shall I take the first point
yes,
there,
Alex,
Michael?
please.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So in the eventuality, and we're talking a hypothetical situation here, although I accept it has happened in previous other parts of the district, but if they did come back for another application, what would happen is they would either have to enter into a new Section 106 agreement or enter into a deed of variation to vary the existing Section 106 agreements. And that variation, as I say, it's all hypothetical, but would essentially take out the requirement about no use of roads, that everything's got to be delivered by the river. So I think that answers that, really. It could be done, but they would have to either enter into a new agreement that ties the new planning permission or enter into a deed of variation that varies the existing 106 and takes out that requirement.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I think I've already explained about the planning controls. I think Alex has also explained that every application has to be judged on its merits. I don't know whether it'd be worth bringing in Adrian, whether he feels that he could share any information with us about, you know, the adequacy of the access points for HGV haulage of mineral.
Thank you, Michael. Chair. Ferry Lane, as it stands at the moment, is, I would suggest, wholly unsuitable for the intensification in terms of use of heavy goods vehicles. That said, if a variation to a condition came in the future and a design was put forward, then that would have to be considered. My concern, the width of Ferry Lane, it's only 5 meters wide, fixed or rigid axle tipper type trucks leaving that site regularly. And I don't have the trip generation figures for that scenario, but they would certainly cross over the centre line. Such would be the nature of egress, if not access movements, which would be a road danger issue. To build an industrial access that would meet standards, I would suggest would significantly change the characteristic of Ferry Lane at that point. It would involve a very wide, i.e. 7 meter wide junction set deep into the site, deeper into the site, with flared access, so as to ensure that the heavy goods vehicles didn't cross over the centre line. Footways would have to be looked at, and so on. So most definitely, as it stands now, if this was a proposal for a vehicular access at this point, I think there would have been serious highways concerns, if not an objection. As to the future, we could only assess what was put forward and submitted to us at that point in time, if that situation arose. Thank you, Chair.
I've no worries about Ferry Lane. My hypothetical was about Aberford Road, with an improved access off Aberford Road, which I think might be a bit harder to fend off.
I would agree with that. I do note the phasing plan does mean that they have to work, from my understanding of the documentation that I've been through, they have to work the Ferry Lane side first in terms of mobilisation, building the wharf and so on. So I think any concerns with Aberford Road would obviously come a lot further down the line. But I would agree with that sentiment that HGV access from and to Aberford Road would probably be more achievable than any such access proposed from Ferry Lane. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you. So I think that's probably provided all the information that can be provided on those points, i.e. that there are robust controls in place. The planning authority can never prevent anyone making any form of application as a duty to consider it. However, there would be significant impediments to the sort of proposal that's been hypothesised here. So in terms of the bond, there was a specific question about a restoration bond. Current planning practice guidance advises against securing restoration bonds except in exceptional circumstances. That is what the guidance says. There does not appear to be any exceptional circumstances in relation to this site that would mean that it would be appropriate to try and seek to secure a bond contrary to planning practice guidance. Planning practice guidance says that local planning authorities should provide for the restoration and aftercare of mineral sites through the imposition of suitably worded planning conditions, such as are in the report before you. So that's the approach that we've taken in assessing the application, is essentially that we can enforce the restoration of the site through the normal planning condition mechanism.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. There's no more questions to officers? No. Then, before we go to the vote, can I ask all members to switch their videos on?
Chair, could I make a comment on this before we move?
Yes, go on then, Councillor, quickly.
It's basically, I find it hard to believe that there'll be no long-term effects on the cumulative noise issue for the school particularly and residents. If there's continuous pumping, the loading chute, conveyor belts, dump trucks, along with the current extra traffic and building that's taking place on city fields, I feel that the cumulative effect could be disproportionate to residents in the area. And we all know that other quarry sites in the district have been causing ongoing problems in this matter, as committee members will be aware. So just like to put that in on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Have we got all members now on video?
Mine crashes, Sandra, if I put mine on.
All right, Catherine. Are we all on? I think so. Apart from Catherine and Angela. Oh, Angela's on. Right, then we were ready to go. Well, the officer's recommendation, therefore, is for approval. Can I have that moved and seconded, please?
Move it, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Then I will, all in favour, I will ask the officer now to go through all the names and do a vote. Over to you, Claire.
Okay, Chair, I'll go through each councillor by name. Councillor Blizzard. For. Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Hepworth.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Scott.
For.
Councillor Swift.
Sorry, for.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Councillor Tennant-King.
4.
Councillor Wallace.
4.
Councillor Williams.
Against.
Councillor Heptinstall.
4.
Councillor Pickham.
4.
Okay, Chair, to confirm, you've got 12 votes in favour, 2 against and no abstentions.
Thank you very much, Claire. Now confirm that that is carried, so the application will go through with the conditions robustly writ as Councillor Jones has asked to make sure that will all be in conditions. If there's nothing else to add, I will just say thank you ever so much for joining us on this committee. And it's been a long one again today, but, you know, thank you very much. Can I now ask that the live stream is turned off, please?